Hello. In this video, I'll explain how to configure and test an AS2 connection in ZEDI so that it can exchange files with one or more of your trading partners. If you've not used AS2 before, then some of the processes I'll be talking about may seem a bit confusing. If this is the case, you may like to watch another video called A Non-Technical Description of AS2 before continuing with this one. The first step in setting up an AS2 connection is to exchange some technical information with your trading partner. This consists of a digital certificate, a URL, and an AS2 name. It may also include information about the encryption and signing algorithms to be used, and the way the MDNs, or the electronic receipts, are going to be handled. As a minimum, you will need a copy of your trading partner certificate, the URL of their AS2 server, and the AS2 name they'll be using. They, in turn, will need the same three things from you. Let's deal with certificates first. Your trading partner will send you a copy of their certificate. This is typically a file with an extension of .cer that looks something like this. Most often, this certificate will be sent to you as an email attachment, but sometimes this can present a challenge. Digital certificates tend to be treated with suspicion by many email servers, and they'll quite often block them. So if you see a message like access to a potentially unsafe attachment has been blocked in your email software, then you'll need to ask your trading partner to send it again, but with a different extension. .txt would be a good choice. Now, this is a good time to mention certificate file types. Certificates can come in a variety of formats. The most commonly used have extensions of .cer and .pfx, but there are several others. .cer files are intended to be shared with other people and organisations. They contain the public key those people would need to be able to encrypt data in a way that makes it readable only to you. .pfx files are secret and have to be kept that way. They contain the private keys that are used to decrypt files sent to you. They need to be stored securely and never emailed to anyone outside your organisation. If your trading partner sends you something other than a .cer file, then I'd suggest politely asking them to send a .cer certificate instead. If they can't do this, then your ZEDI service provider may be able to convert it into a .cer file for you. Once you have their certificate as a .cer, the next step is to install it within ZEDI. This is done via the Other People's Certificates section on the Communications tab. Save the certificate to a folder on your PC, and then click the Add button to upload it into ZEDI. You'll then see information about the certificate and be asked to confirm that you wish to import it, once you've satisfied yourself that it's the right one. It's possible that your trading partner could send you two certificates rather than one, and this is usually because one certificate is intended for live transactions and the other one is for test. In this situation, you should import both of them. Your trading partner will also need a copy of your certificate. A list of possible certificates can be found in the Your Certificates section under the Communications tab. If the list is empty, then you'll either need to install an existing certificate or create a new one. Installing an existing certificate is done using the Upload button. You'd use this to select the .pfx that contains your certificate and its private key. Now, as I mentioned, PFX files contain highly sensitive information. They're usually password protected, so you'll need to enter the correct password in order to import it. You could also create a new certificate by clicking the Add button, and this gives you a form that looks like this. Check the name and address details, and then click Create. To get the .cer file for your chosen certificate, click the Download button. The form will ask you whether or not you wish to include the private key. Now leave this as No. You'd only select Yes if you wanted to make a backup of your certificate and its private key that you then intend to keep in a safe place. Once you've downloaded the certificate, you'll have a file named something like this. To avoid possible problems with email servers, it's a good idea to rename it before emailing it to your trading partner. One final note about certificates before we move on. One of the properties of a certificate is its thumbprint. This is a long sequence of hexadecimal characters that looks like this. Every certificate has a different thumbprint, so when setting up AS2 connections it's good to identify the ones you need using their thumbprints. Certificates also have serial numbers, but these are not necessarily unique, especially when working with AS2 where self-signed certificates are common. One of the common problems that can occur when testing AS2 connections is that one side thinks they're using a particular certificate, but it might just be one that's simply very similar to the one the other side is using. Quoting thumbprints when talking to your trading partners is an unambiguous way of saying exactly which certificates you're using. Now for the URLs. Your trading partner will need to know the address of your AS2 server, and you'll need to know the address of theirs. Let's deal with your one first. The URL of your AS2 server will be in this format, where environment is the environment code you use to log on to ZEDI. So an example would be this. It's possible that your trading partner's URL could either look like this or like this. The first uses the IP address of the server, and the other uses the domain name. Given the choice, it's safer to use the domain name version, since IP addresses can sometimes change without warning. If this were to happen, then you might find that at some point in the future your AS2 connection with the trading partner would suddenly stop working. This is less likely if you use the domain name. You should also be aware that some trading partners will have two different URLs, one for test transactions and the other for live. I'll talk about how to deal with that shortly. Now for the AS2 names. These are used to identify the sender and recipient of each file exchanged using AS2. You can make yours whatever you like, providing it consists of uppercase letters and numbers only. Don't choose an AS2 name that contains space characters, as these are known to cause problems with many other AS2 systems. My suggestion would be to decide on two names, both starting with your environment code, followed by AS2, and then either live or test. In other words, if your environment code was Johnson, then the names would be Johnson AS2 Live and Johnson AS2 Test. In a similar way, your trading partner may be using two different AS2 names, one for test and the other one for live. We're now going to work through an example from the point of view of a company called Johnson Pet Foods. They need to set up an AS2 connection with one of their customers, Big Supermarket. Both sides have exchanged AS2 details and certificates with each other, and this is what's been agreed. Note that the last section here shows the encryption algorithm, signature algorithm, and MDN delivery options. The values shown are the defaults that should work with any other AS2 system, but it's possible that your trading partner may require you to use something different. For example, Amazon now requires its trading partners to use AES-128 for encryption and SHA-256 for signing. Johnson has already installed the certificate from Big Supermarket within ZEDI and is now ready to configure the AS2 connection. They've created a trading partner definition for Big Supermarket that looks like this. On the Communications tab, they've specified AS2 as the communications method. In the Production section, they've entered the URL of Big Supermarket's AS2 server, but without the HTTP prefix. Instead, the protocol field has been set to HTTP. They then use the Select button beside the Partner Certificate field to select the certificate with the required thumbprint. As this is the Production section, the partner's AS2 name has been set to Big Super AS2 Live. In the Your Certificate field, they again use the Select button to pick the certificate with the thumbprint they've advised Big Supermarket to expect from Johnson Foods. Again, because this is the Production section, the Your AS2 name has been set to Johnson AS2 Live. The Test section looks very similar to the Production section. The only differences are the two AS2 names, but in other situations the URL and certificate may need to be different as well. In the Advanced section, the default values are being used. Now, this is where, if you needed to, you could specify a different encryption algorithm, like AES-128, and a different signature algorithm, like SHA-256. In the upper section of the screen, the MDN delivery field has been set to synchronous. This is the usual value, but some trading partners prefer to use the asynchronous option. Once these entries had all been made, Johnson saved the changes and asked Big Supermarket to send a test file. This is the test file they received. In the session logs section, there are a number of log files that contain diagnostic information. These would be useful if there was a problem that needed to be investigated. The file that ends .log.txt contains information about what happened when the test file from Big Supermarket was processed. Now, I won't go through it in detail here, but the important thing to know is that if there was a problem, the log file will show an asterisk character on one or more of the lines immediately after the time. If, like this one, there are no asterisk characters, then the file was processed successfully. Johnson then performed a second test to check that files can be sent to Big Supermarket successfully. And this is the transaction they sent. Like before, the session log file section shows a file with an extension of .log.txt that records what happened when the transaction was sent. Also, like before, the lack of any asterisk characters means that it went through successfully. This is an example of a log file that was produced when a typo had been made when entering the URL for Big Supermarket's AS2 server. In these situations, ZEDI has no way of determining whether this was a temporary problem or something more serious. After the first failed attempt, it will wait 5 minutes and then try again. If that second attempt fails, it will wait 10 minutes and try again. And it will keep doing this, waiting an additional 5 minutes between each attempt until either the file is delivered successfully or it's failed 10 times. One of the most common causes of AS2 connection problems are firewalls. The trading partner's firewall needs to be configured to permit incoming connections to their AS2 server. Otherwise, your server would be unable to send files to them. If this has not been done, or has been done incorrectly, then ZEDI will show multiple attempts to deliver the file until eventually it gives up. Frequently, the firewall rules are IP address specific, so they'll only permit connections from a known list of IP addresses. You can find out what IP address your AS2 server is using by running the following command from a Windows command prompt. So, if your environment code was Johnson, the command would be this. This will show you the IP address, and you can then ask your trading partner to configure that as one of the permitted addresses on their firewall. So, in summary, configuring and testing an AS2 connection in ZEDI involves exchanging configuration information with your trading partner, exchanging certificates with your trading partner, installing the trading partner's certificate into ZEDI, creating a trading partner definition and configuring it for your partner's live AS2 server, as well as their test server if need be, receiving a test file from the trading partner and sending a test file to them. If you run into problems, the session log files will contain useful information. If you're unsure about what needs to be done to fix a problem, your ZEDI service provider will be happy to offer their advice. Thank you.